When hardened criminals repeatedly evade justice, elite police units come together to crack these toughest cases.
Police officers!
My role is investigating serious and organised crime.
We are a covert investigative team.
For the first time across the UK, we have exclusive access to the investigations of Britain's most talented detectives.
We'll spend years putting together all of these tiny pieces of evidence.
The most bizarre investigation I've been involved in.
And share the methods and evidence that can bring these criminals to book.
Handguns coming in from the United States.
He had the drugs. That is a lot of money.
A real whodidit.
This time, a multi-million-pound mugging in a Surrey shopping centre.
He had been carrying £4.1 million worth of jewellery on him.
Leaves a man in hospital and the police with little to go on.
My heart dropped. He'd been face down on the floor and he wouldn't be able to provide us with a description.
A gang smuggling in guns from the States.
There was potentially firearms and ammunition heading for criminal hands.
Put the police on red alert.
There was only one response and we had to get that response right.
In a drug-dealing clan in Wales.
He had people collecting drugs, people collecting money, people delivering.
Are brought down by a police drone.
You could see him running, garden hopping to the rear of the property.
I've been a police officer for 12 years. It's a bit of a family business. My dad was a police officer and most of my time growing up I was adamant I was going to do anything but join the police. I never realised how much I'd enjoy it and how much it'd be a vocation for me rather than a job. Surrey is quite a small county compared to most in the country. It is relatively safe to live in, but we're also on the outskirts of London, so we do get some serious and some organised crime.
DS Kate Hyder is a Deputy Senior Investigating Officer in Surrey, running a team who specialise in covert and proactive operations.
It was a relatively large team compared to most, and a real mixture of detectives and police constables that worked in the team. Hannah was one of my main detectives in the department at the time. She hadn't actually been there very long.
Hannah still works with an undercover team, so her identity needs to remain hidden.
My role is to investigate a wide variety of crimes, particularly burglaries. It's really tough. The hours can be long, but I would say it's rewarding.
A call came in to 999 of a highly violent robbery in a car park, with millions of pounds of jewellery taken. Such a unique and serious case demanded a highly skilled team.
It became clear to me that this was a really big job, so I went in to speak to one of our bosses at the time and asked whether I might be able to take it, because I knew it was going to be a really interesting case to investigate.
We love a challenge, and it was really exciting because it's such a large-scale loss. £4 million is an extraordinary amount.
DS Hyder and her team launched Operation Mouse to investigate.
Police received a call from a member of the public that was working in Staines Town Centre saying that a male had come down from the Elmsley Centre car park with a number of injuries on him, asking for help.
The man who had been attacked was a travelling salesman for a luxury American jewellery brand. He was known in the business as Frenchie.
I host events featuring our jewellery line. I got up, got ready, went to the car, loaded my bags, and headed towards the shopping centre. I parked closest to where the entrance and the elevator were. I sat in the car for a minute or so, gathering stuff that I wanted to take with me. And then I got out of the car, went to the back door to gather more things, and a car I noticed started to come around. The exit next to my car was kind of small, so I shut the door a little bit, let the car through. Well, the car stopped, and that's when I heard the door behind me open. And as I turned, I got hit in the head, and I just kept getting hit. I got thrown to the floor, I got kicked, I got stabbed in the wrist. I could barely see what was going on because they weren't letting up. I could see out of the corner of my eye that they were unloading my car of the suitcases, which included the jewelry. and I could feel myself start to fade away. I noticed a fire escape. I went very quickly there and down to the street. It was pretty hard to see. My eyes had been hit hard, and I was bleeding. Finally found somebody for some help. Luckily, this guy worked at the building next door, and he took me in. They had security there. They called police.
With no witnesses and no cameras at the scene, the victim's account was their only lead.
He had been carrying £4.1 million worth of jewellery on him and had been meant to be showcasing in Ernest Jones that day. That jewellery had all been taken off of him.
He had extensive facial bruising, a fractured eye socket, damage to his wrist, and at that time we had no leads.
He told us he couldn't see anything. My heart dropped. He'd been face down on the floor and he wouldn't be able to provide us with a description, which is quite rare in a case like this, that they can't tell us anything about the people that had committed it.
The team had no suspects and no idea how the criminals had known to target the £1 million haul. They had to move fast.
There are a number of things that if you don't do early, you will lose. And we call that the golden hour, to try and obtain any kind of forensic evidence from the scene. So a number of swabs were taken from the victim, from the vehicle that he had been driving, and from the area to try and identify whether we could get any forensics linking suspects to this offence.
At the hospital, the robbery victim was just beginning to see how badly he had been beaten.
I ended up with orbital fractures in my face, reduced vision. I had fractured wrist, where a knife had gone in and actually broken the bone. Everything was gone, and no ID, no money, no real way to do anything.
Kate and the team stepped up their investigation.
We knew that there was going to be a large amount of CCTV around the town centre because this had happened central in Staines, where we knew that there were a lot of cameras.
We started with the CCTV within the car park. It has an automatic number plate recognition system that records the cars going in and out. So we knew what time the victim had come into the car park, so we initially started to look at cars that came in before and after him. We identified a dark Mercedes.
It was the team's first lead, but there was plenty of work still to be done.
We had a make and model of a vehicle that could be seen on CCTV coming out of the car park, going straight through the barrier, pulling the barrier off. We knew what the number plate was, we could see it on the CCTV camera. We then followed that car through Staines Town Centre, where it hit a number of other cameras and we could see it still had that number plate on. As you come further out of Staines Town Centre, there's less CCTV. We knew it had gone in a certain direction, but not its exact route. We would have then expected that car to come up on an ANPR camera, either outside of the town centre or onto the M25, but that number plate didn't appear anywhere.
We then look at that number plate, look at where it's registered to, and find out it had actually been stolen only a couple of days before. So this person that lives in London had his number plate stolen. We'd have to go and speak to him, and he said he's never been in Surrey, let alone Staines.
So what we knew was at some point they'd stopped and switched number plates on that vehicle, and we had to work out what the new number plate was.
With no witnesses and the car's true identity deliberately hidden, the team were now convinced they were facing a serious and professional gang.
My gut instinct was this was organised crime, and this was probably going to be quite tricky to investigate because that would require some kind of premeditation and planning, which allows you to cover your tracks. I knew that this was going to be a tough investigation to run.
To find out where the car had gone, the team turned to a tried and tested method of policing, door-to-door inquiries. They focused on the residential area where the car had last been seen.
Some people may see an event but not realise it's a crime, or they may have key information and don't take those steps to contact us.
The old school approach paid off.
What we identified was a member of the public who described an incident where she saw a black Mercedes parked down her road earlier on that morning. She described what she thought was a drug deal going on.
She believed they were doing something odd, and she made a note of the number plate.
So we put these pieces together and we realised the suspects and the suspect vehicle had driven down her road before the incident, changed onto the number plates that the offence was committed on, gone back to her road afterwards, changed back onto some new number plates, which she'd given us the details of, and then left the area. And that was really our first bit of key evidence.
Not only had the witness got the number plate for the black Mercedes, another witness in the same road had taken down details of a second car.
She'd described that as a blue Fiesta. She'd also managed to describe the people she'd seen, there being 4 males there. One of the males as very large male, quite distinctive, bald head. One of them appeared to be of kind of South American background, potentially quite tan skin, black hair. We had 2 cars meeting up before the incident. Both the cars' occupants getting into the Mercedes to go and commit the offence, and we had the changing of the number plates. All the team were really excited at this point.
But their excitement turned to disappointment when results came back on the number plate for the black Mercedes.
It wasn't matching any vehicles that were registered in the country. But doing ANPR on the number plate she'd given us identified a vehicle 1 number out that hit the M25 ANPR camera leaving Staines just after our incident. We started analysing ANPR cameras on the M25 to try and work out the number plate of that blue Fiesta, which was clearly involved, and we identified a vehicle going through the camera at the same time as the Mercedes.
The Mercedes and the Fiesta travelled down in convoy from London to Staines and then back again. We had clear evidence they were travelling down together. From that we can look into our police national computer that will tell us the correct Mercedes.
But the team's inquiries produced a startling result.
The blue Fiesta was registered to a well-known person in the Tottenham area, a guy called Lee Gardner. I looked at pictures that we had of him on the system, and he very clearly matched the description that the witness had given as to the person that she'd seen get out of the Fiesta and then get into the Mercedes. He had only come out of prison 2 years prior to this offence for murder.
Operation Mouse had a convicted killer, his picture and his car in the area, but that's all they had.
What we couldn't do at that point was put him at the scene of the offence or actually assaulting our victim.
Meanwhile, information started to come through on the true ownership of the black Mercedes.
It looked like it had been sold the day beforehand, but its previous owner, again, was really well known to the police. We started looking at him to see whether he matched the description that the witness had given us, and it did. And this was a guy called Camillo Carvajal. He was someone that lived in the South London area, and again, a real history of being an organised criminal.
Once again, they had a name, but no witnesses or forensic evidence.
We call that a circumstantial case. All we had at this point was 2 males coming into Surrey in their vehicles and leaving again. If they turned around and said, we went to Staines shopping for an hour, we couldn't disprove that.
Kate's team needed to find another way to prove that the suspects had been involved in the crime.
When a crime like this is committed, people need to speak to each other. So what we wanted to look at was phone numbers for the 2 males we'd identified at this point, see what contact they had with other phones around the morning of the offence.
The Fiesta is registered to one of the suspects. From that, we are able to obtain a phone number that he's given to police a year or so prior to this offence. We are able to look what calls he's made at the time of the offence, or who's he contacting, where's he making these phone calls from.
To analyse the phone calls and the network information, the team needed an even greater level of expertise. They called on a specialist data investigator, John.
John's role is looking at all of the different streams of data that we have coming in and building that picture, quite often mapping it so it visually could be seen on a piece of paper.
Because of the nature of his work, he cannot be identified.
You're trying to show a conspiracy to commit robbery. It's key to show communication and linking the individuals together as well. For example, phones obviously use a cell site. A cell site has a range of several kilometres, so that's quite circumstantial. But when you tie it in with the CCTV, which is a fixed point and place in time, and the ANPR camera, which is similar, you can start building up that picture, because then you can demonstrate planning, contact on the day in question, you can show movement, and you can put people at the scene.
We're getting little bits of information. We're starting to get names of people, we're starting to get numbers.
As they traced the suspects' phone cell sites, they found 2 other unknown phone numbers frequently cropped up.
phone numbers for Lee Gardner and Camillo Carverhouse start contacting 2 other phone numbers. 3 of those 4 phones then travel into the Surrey area and are in Staines at the time of the offence. We've got 2 phone numbers for 2 unknown people at the moment, which may actually be our 3rd and 4th suspect. One of them is linked to a male called Ciro Troiano, also known to police. We identify a male walking through the Elmsley shopping centre prior to this offence happening. There were no shops open. When we looked at that and we looked at Troiano's photo from previous arrests, we realised that that's the same male.
And when the team received footage of where the victim had been on the days before the attack, they could finally understand how he had been targeted.
On the day that the victim was showcasing that jewellery in Maidenhead, Troiano had gone into that shop, walked around and walked back out again. They'd done what we call a recce. They knew who their victim was and what he looked like.
The criminals did hostile reconnaissance on him on at least 2 occasions, and so I was able to take the mobile phone records and see, right, during this time, who were they calling? Seeing them following the victim around, and at the same time, with the ANPR, seeing the sort of general pattern of travel that they took.
As the team mapped out the suspect's movements, they found CCTV which showed them meeting in a garage on the morning of the crime.
In that footage, you have the Ford Fiesta that we'd already identified in convoy with that black Mercedes. They pull up at the side of the petrol station and a couple of the males get out. Troiano was there, and this was really the first kind of facial images of our suspects that we got. And there was a 4th male, and you can see he's got a really distinctive tattoo on his hand. At that point, we had no idea who that male was. We've got visual images of some males in the town centre linked to the vehicle that we knew had committed this offence. We had no forensics and no witnesses.
The evidence was still circumstantial, so digital investigator John painstakingly built up a map of the communications between the men to show where they had been and at what time.
So you've got phone, you've got vehicle, and then you've got something visual as well, which puts them in the right place at the right times. Then after the offence, where they go herring back up the M25, you then say, well, where do they go back to? We were able to put them back to their respective addresses, and then later on, as they all do what we call co-locate, that is to come together. So you have to take that work and make it absolutely bomb-proof.
They were getting closer to having the evidence to arrest the 3 suspects, but they still didn't know who the 4th man was.
I found this so frustrating. We had a clear facial image of him, we had a tattoo on the hand, we had a phone number linked to him, but nothing else. We just couldn't work out who owned that phone.
But after 2 months of painstakingly piecing together the case, the team decided to act.
We're at the point here where we can arrest the 3 that we know about. We still had that 4th suspect outstanding, but there's only a certain amount of time you can hold off. So we organised a big day of action with over 200 police officers to conduct warrants at the home address of Lee Gardner, Ciro Troiano and Camillo Carverhouse. As we put those doors in, I got told straight away, we've got Lee Gardner, he's in custody. We've got Camillo Carverhouse, but Ciro Troiano wasn't at the address we thought he was at. This was a real concern to me because if we couldn't find him quickly, we knew that he might leave the country. Half of my team was sent off to go and look for him. We found Troiano about 3 days later in an address in South London.
At last, they got some solid evidence of their involvement in the crime.
When we conducted a search of Lee Gardner's address, we actually found jewellery on his bedside table. Really, really unique jewellery. They're really famous, La Vienne, for their chocolate diamonds, and well-known people like Beyonce wear it. When we conducted the search of Camillo Carverhouse's address, we found some Omega sunglasses that the victim said were his, and they were actually ones that couldn't even be bought in the UK, and the spare key to the Mercedes that he'd supposedly sold a couple of days before this incident.
But they still had no name for their 4th suspect, until a mobile phone provided one final breakthrough.
Oscar Hicks had never been arrested before. He, on paper, looked like a really upstanding member of the community. But when we start looking at the details of the phone data, When we look at his social media online, we can see he's got that tattoo on his hand, and we knew he was that fourth male involved in our incident. So once we were happy we knew where he was, we went out and conducted that arrest.
More incriminating evidence was discovered.
To our surprise, he still had prescription medication for our victim in his bedside table at home.
After 8 months of intensive investigation and a trial lasting 6 weeks, all 4 men were found guilty. At Kingston Crown Court, Oscar Hicks was jailed for 14 years. Ciro Troiano received 16 years. Camille Carvajal was sentenced to 17 years. And finally, Lee Gardner received 18 years.
The satisfaction at the end when we received the guilty verdict was monumental.
To get that sentence at the end of it and that recognition for our victim was really important to the team. Everyone was really, really happy with that.
Despite tough gun control laws, there were over 6,000 firearm offences recorded by police in England and Wales in 2019 to 2020, contributing to a rise in gang-related crime.
Went to university and worked in various shops on the weekends, and you see the police officers coming in to arrest shoplifters. I was fascinated by the whole thing, found it quite exciting. And this notion of being able to lock up criminals and protect vulnerable people was what I wanted to do. It's a great force to work in, being in the southwest of the country with the urban and rural mix of communities, which presents different challenges. What I've seen over the last couple of years is increase in particularly violent crime linked to sort of county lines and drug supply, violent offending linked to firearms and gang culture.
DCI Dewfall leads a team of officers who deal with serious and violent crime in the southwest. In November 2019, they got information that put them on major alert.
We became aware of intelligence that individuals in the Bristol area were offering firearms for sale. They were using encrypted messaging platforms to offer these weapons to the highest bidder, trying to make as much money as they could, as quickly as they could.
Their inside intelligence also revealed that the guns were coming in from abroad. DCI Dewfall needed to bring in the experts from outside his team, so he turned to the UK's FBI.
We liaised with our colleagues at the National Crime Agency, who were able to provide support on an international scale for us.
The National Crime Agency, it sits at the point of tackling the highest threats to the UK, drawing together the tactics, drawing together the information and the intelligence across a number of agencies, which enables us to be able to tackle serious organised crime at its highest level.
DCI Dewfall also called in the expertise of the National Ballistic Intelligence Service, or NBIS, the leading police experts on firearms in the UK.
We were set up primarily as this service to really understand the national picture of the criminal use of firearms, to understand what types of weapons have been seized, to potentially do what we call crime checks. So that is to check whether those guns have actually been used in the UK or whether they've been used further afield, whether this is an isolated event or is this part of a wider supply chain? Is this part of an emerging threat that we need to understand?
The 3 law organisations formed a task force to tackle the influx of guns onto Britain's streets. Their code name, Operation Billboard. DCI Dewfall was getting confirmation from his sources that guns were indeed on Bristol's streets.
We do get a lot of intelligence, and sometimes it's found to be false, but on this occasion, we established that this was a credible threat and that there was potentially firearms and ammunition heading onto the streets of Bristol. We had to get that response right.
And I received a phone call from DCI Simon Dewfall to talk about the fact that they had identified international supply chains within their operation. Simon informed me that they were aware of handguns coming in from the United States, that they were secreted in a speaker system.
Police information had revealed the way the guns were being smuggled in, but not the exact area in the US they were coming from.
The contents of the Bluetooth speakers were being emptied out, filled up with guns and ammunition, and put in the parcel service and sent to addresses in Bristol.
The criminals had dismantled the guns to hide them in the speakers.
Something like this pistol, you would take the magazine out, bring the slide back. You would then remove the middle pin, take the slide off from the frame, remove the recoil spring, remove the barrel, and you've essentially broken the pistol down into its main components. And those components then can be individually wrapped up, disguised, and then smuggled in. These particular guns, what we call self-loading pistols, there's a bit of kudos around this type of pistol. It looks relatively aggressive. It's the sort of thing that gang members would want.
Those weapons built right, putting the component parts together in the right format, using the right ammunition, potentially if discharged, it would result in a number of fatalities.
The National Crime Agency have over 150 agents around the world, many in America, and they became part of the wider investigation.
With our partners in law enforcement in the United States, we were able to glean the intelligence from the Avon and Somerset inquiry, put that together with some of the profiling in terms of the modus operandi used, the type of packaging, the type of routing that might be involved. And in doing so, we were able to pass that information back to our colleagues in the United States. We were aware that this group emanated from the Caribbean, so they potentially had relationships as far down as St. Kitts and through Atlanta. And as a consequence of joining all of those dots, we were able to quickly identify further packages, in one case, one in Miami airport, and that resulted in an intervention at Miami before it arrived in the UK.
The parcels they had seized at Miami airport contained ammunition that was being sent through the post to an address in the UK.
The initial focus of the investigation was to painstakingly go through every parcel that had come through addresses, who was associated to these individuals, and who else could potentially have bought one.
The location identified was the base of a three-man gang: Alcott Fleming, Kenville Hall and Boisseso Benjamin. But they were too late. The gang had already started to advertise the guns quite brazenly on social media.
These firearms can be picked up for a few $100s in a gun store in America. The worth on the streets in the UK are thousands. They were offering these firearms for sale. They were offering them far and wide across the UK. That video was sent to a number of individuals, showing the quality of the firearms and, whetting the appetite. They could get their hands on one of these guns, which are incredibly rare in the UK and would be of significant value. We could not allow those firearms into the hands of criminals.
The team knew the address in Bristol where the packages had been delivered, but with firearms involved, they had to tread cautiously.
This was a carefully planned and orchestrated operation. I was coordinating the events from headquarters. Obviously, we had a number of teams involved. The risks around an operation like this are significant. The risk to the public, those firearms, the risk to officers making the arrests, dangerous criminals who've got access to firearms. We've got officers who are trained to deal with that type of operation.
After meticulous preparations, the tactical team moved in to arrest the gang members.
It was planned to ensure that the suspects were arrested at the same time.
Oh, police officers! Come to the front door with your hands where we can see them!
Addresses were simultaneously searched so we could stand the best chance of recovering evidence that would prove this offence.
Come to the front door with your hands where we can see them!
Individuals were arrested. Following their arrest, their properties and their vehicles were all searched. And that led to the recovery of evidence that showed how these weapons were being imported into Bristol. We recovered the boxes, the Bluetooth speakers, packaging. We also identified other addresses in London that had been used for the same purpose. Most pleasing is we were able to recover those firearms and that ammunition. We were able to secure enough evidence to get them charged and remanded in custody. They were facing a significant custodial sentence. My big fear was if we let them go or they were bailed from the police station, that we would never see them again.
The guns recovered had no serial numbers, so they were sent to the Ballistics Intelligence Service for further investigation.
Weapons like this, where they've got serial numbers that have been erased, we've got these techniques that we can use to try to get those numbers back. That is very useful for investigating where they've been sourced from, who's purchased them. Also, the ballistic firing markings, when we test fire the guns, have they been used here in the UK or have they been used elsewhere? Again, it's really trying to understand what is the history of that weapon. We have an obligation to turn around the evidence and the forensic intelligence and report that back quickly to Avon and Somerset police.
With the history of the guns now confirmed, police were able to charge the Gang of Three with conspiracy to supply firearms. In Bristol, Alcott Fleming was sentenced to 10 years and 5 months. Cecil Benjamin was sentenced to 12 years. And Kenville Hall received 17 years and 2 months.
I'm really proud to lead that response on behalf of the NCA to help out other regions and forces in the manner that we did with Avon and Somerset. It really does just give you that sense that as law enforcement across the UK, we're really joined up.
An operation of this scale, an international criminal group motivated by just pure greed, supplying firearms across the world, buying them legally in America, intending those firearms to go into the hands of criminals with no consideration whatsoever as to the consequences.
Drug crime figures in Cardiff, Wales reached a 5-year high in 2020. With 1,960 drug-related crimes recorded, a 12% rise in the year before.
I'm a operational chief inspector, so I've got an area of Cardiff over in the east that covers St Mellons, Rumney, Llanishen and Llanedin. I've got a team of response officers and neighbourhood policing teams as well. We deal with the day-to-day operational policing calls and look at the problems within our communities that our communities want dealt with. The drug dealing and drugs in general is a problem across all cities in the UK. And it's not one you can become complacent in, because for every time you take somebody out, there's another 3 or 4 people further down the chain who are willing to step up.
Chief Inspector McCarthy's teams in the community were reporting that a known drug-dealing gang, led by one man, was starting to ramp up their operation.
Jamie Germain is well known in Cardiff, and particularly in Rumney in the East Cluster, because that's where he lives. He's been active for quite a number of years within that location and is well known to most of the response officers as somebody who is prolifically involved in crime and, in particular, drugs in the area. He had people collecting drugs, people collecting money, people delivering, and he had numerous addresses that he was running from.
The local police team's disruption tactics were not enough to stop Jamie and his gang, and his drug dealing not only continued, but was expanding.
That was causing us concern to the point we thought we really need to escalate this and do a little bit more than our routine disruption. We needed to take some more action with him. We asked for him to be escalated to a regional job because of the amount of crime he was involved in. We knew he was prolific, we just didn't know to what extent.
They called in a specialist major crime incident team to tackle the problem and launched Operation Lilac Mars. All the officers in the unit work undercover, including the boss, DI Mark. Due to the nature of his work, DI Mark cannot be identified.
Our team is a dedicated unit which uses covert tactics in order to target organised crime groups. Operation Lilac Mars started from the 1st of January 2018 and was a continuous operation. Jamie Germain was responsible for the large-scale supply and distribution of cannabis. It was a well-established network that he had, which mainly evolved around close family and friends.
The gang's headquarters was Jamie Germain's home address in North Cardiff.
The main difficulties that we faced was the house which he operated from was in a difficult area for us to keep control of from a police perspective.
Investigating was seriously hampered because of the local population's close ties to Germain.
What we were seeing was large numbers of youths involved in drug running and antisocial behaviour around Jamie and his property. We saw a number of youngsters starting to carry weapons, and they were all sort of bandying to sort of get higher up in the chain within his criminality.
To gather evidence to prove the extent of the drug dealing, the team installed covert surveillance cameras on his house.
When we're deployed and gathering evidence and you're watching exchanges take place and identifying safe houses and seeing who else is involved, it can be difficult at times, and you do have some lows when things don't always go to plan and you don't necessarily capture what you need to.
Even though they had surveillance on the gang, time and time again the team found that the boss, Jamie Germain, was one step ahead.
Jamie Germain has been dealt with previously for drugs-related offences. He's aware of police tactics. Quite often, when deliveries were being made to his home address, he would purposely make sure that he was elsewhere and make arrangements with other family members to be present in order to take possession of the drugs. I thought that we'd always get him, but there were difficulties along the way.
For 7 months, the team watched Jamie Germain's every move.
We gathered the evidence during that period in order to focus on him and others that were involved in the supply of cannabis.
The task force had made a number of low-level arrests, but hadn't recovered the quantities of drugs they'd anticipated.
Where we were expecting to recover larger amounts of cannabis, we were faced with large amounts of cash. The largest amount in one particular seizure was £218,000. We did have positive results with small amounts of cannabis.
Even though they had only found small amounts, they did have hours of evidential footage of the gang's drug dealing.
During the course of the operation, we were seeing large laundry bags, which we believed to be full of cannabis. And on occasions, it was multiple laundry bags going into the address. This happened on a regular basis.
He had numerous properties here in Cardiff that he was running various things from, signed over to his sons. So the whole family could have just stepped and gone somewhere else and started this whole thing again.
Quite often you get to a point where you're not going to gather much more evidence from using the covert tactics. Often we're making preparations to make sure that when we do the enforcement, that it runs as smoothly as possible.
With over £200,000 seized and more evidence of drug dealing from their surveillance footage, the team decided to act and raid all 12 homes associated with the gang at once.
You normally don't sleep well the night before. There's always the anticipation around making sure that the operation runs smoothly, coordinating all 12 addresses to be approached simultaneously.
We came in for a very early briefing around 4:35 in the morning.
There are over 180 officers that needed to be briefed and manoeuvred out to the relevant locations.
We needed our method of entry teams who do the high power entry with tools cutting through the doors.
They also decided to employ a new piece of technology to give them a bird's eye view of the operation.
We had drones filming.
We had a live feed back to the command room. It's a lot more cost effective than utilising a helicopter, and the quality of the imagery was second to none.
I think the apprehension is there, the tension is there, you can feel it. Everybody was getting into place. We had everybody where we could get them so that it was slick and they were quick to get into each address. And then it's a waiting game, and we were just waiting for that strike. So as soon as the commander was happy that everybody was in place, the strike call went in, and that was it. There's always a risk if you get it wrong. There's the flight risk that they'll go. We did not want to give this person an opportunity to start again and disrupt another community. It was numerous addresses being put in. You get some radio noise where teams are coming up and saying which address they've breached. A whole raft of data that was coming at you then, people were being detained. They found Jamie in his house, and his sons were also in the house. The one son's gone out over the back. Luckily, we had the drone up.
And you could see him then running and garden hopping to the rear of the property. We were able to keep control of that individual and he was subsequently arrested, hiding in one of the rear gardens. We'd identified what we thought was a safe house, which was a few doors away from Jamie Germain's house. As a result of searching that address, we recovered £47,000 in cash, half a kilo of cannabis, and also a encrypted phone. Once we've secured the property and gained control of all the individuals within, we can then move forward the search teams and meticulously work through each of the properties to make sure that no evidence is missed.
Drugs were found, money were found, and that sort of a couple of hours went by in a flash.
There were weapons being found, the likes of machetes, crossbows, knives, and so on.
Jamie Germain headed a gang that sold 3.8 million worth of drugs. It was one of the largest cash seizures in South Wales Police. We had over £600,000 seized from him.
And in a final ironic twist, Germain himself unintentionally provided the police with a treasure trove of additional evidence.
Jamie Germain had quite a sophisticated CCTV camera facility on the outside of his address. This was there potentially to protect himself and his family from other rival gangs or to forewarn them of police activity. It actually turned out brilliant for us. We had months worth of footage which coincided with key dates which showed the delivery of the laundry bags which we believed contained large amounts of cannabis, and it also identified those persons that were involved.
Germain's hard drive proved a last definitive evidential punch. 5 members of his gang were sentenced to a combined total of 15 years in prison. Another 5 gang members were given suspended sentences. And Jamie Germain himself was sentenced to 7 years in jail.
It's good to see the positive outcome. So you drop the stone in the pond, that ripple effect of how one person's actions affect a whole community and how it spreads so easily. We needed to get that community feeling safe again. So there was absolutely a lot riding on it, and we just had to get it right.